Hello, and thank you for joining us again here on Aviation News Talk for a Newsmakers episode, where we talk to people in aviation who are making the news. When pilots think about stepping up to a high-performance aircraft, well, the Beechcraft Bonanza is often on their short list. And for most pilots who rent or own a complex aircraft such as the Bonanza, one of the best ways to remain safe in these aircraft is to become a member of an aircraft type club like the American Bonanza Society, which is in the news because it's celebrating its 50th anniversary. In a moment, I'll be sitting down with Tom Turner, Executive Director of the American Bonanza Society's Air Safety Foundation, and I will be asking him to talk in general about the many services and benefits pilots typically get when they join an aircraft type club, of which, by the way, there are more than 100. And then we'll drill down and talk about the specifics of the American Bonanza Society and the services they provide for Beach Bonanza owners and pilots. So get ready, because this Newsmakers episode starts now. Welcome to Aviation News Talk, where we talk about general aviation. I'm Max Trescott, and if you enjoy the show, please tell your friends what a podcast is, and then help them set this show up on their phone. Now, before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about Tom Turner. Tom spent 6 years in the Air Force and was a Minuteman Missile Combat Crew Commander. Later, he earned a master's degree in aviation safety with an emphasis on pilot training methods and human factors. He has held a number of flying jobs since then, including a 5-year period when he was a lead instructor at Flight Safety International, responsible for all factory-approved training for the Beach Bonanza. In 2003, he became the manager of technical services for the American Bonanza Society, overseeing all ABS educational efforts, including the magazine, website, and the Beach Pilot Proficiency Program, better known as the BPPP, which is one of the programs we'll be talking about. He also runs Mastery Flight Training, through which he provides individual flight instruction for Beach Bonanza and Baron owners. He holds an ATP certificate and was named the 2010 National FAA Safety Team Representative of the Year and was inducted into the Flight Instructor Hall of Fame in 2015. Well, Tom, I'd like to officially welcome you to the Aviation News Talk podcast. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you very much, Max. I'm happy to be here as well.
Great. Hey, let's start from the top. For people who are not familiar, tell us what an aircraft type club is and what kind of services and benefits people would typically get by being a member of a type club.
Well, an aircraft type club is an association of owners of a particular aircraft type, hence the name. The actual products and services provided will vary dramatically based on the number of people involved and, in some cases, the aircraft type. But in all cases, type clubs are when owners and enthusiasts for a particular aircraft model come together to share technical and operational information, operating tips, and to engage in social activities among other people that enjoy flying that particular type of aircraft.
Well, good. So let's talk specifically about the American Bonanza Society. I mean, tell me a little bit about the club's core mission, how many members you have, and things like that.
Well, American Bonanza Society is enjoying its 50th year of operation this year, so it's a big celebration for us. We currently have just under 9,200 members, which actually is the highest membership number we've had in about 3 or 4 years now. We've had a period of slow but steady growth in the last couple of years. We exist primarily to share aircraft technical information and operating hints, to assist owners and their mechanics in troubleshooting the thorny type-specific issues that sometimes come up during maintenance and inspection events, and to provide training to individual pilots, flight instructors teaching in the type, and actual hands-on and classroom training for mechanics so that they can better maintain our members' airplanes. We also have a thriving technical website where a great deal of the technical information needed to operate and maintain these airplanes is available, and a monthly publication, ABS Magazine, which is a professionally produced periodical that goes to all the members. It's probably the most visible thing about being an ABS member.
Let's talk a little bit about the Bonanza itself. I mean, how long has the aircraft been around? What's kind of the history of the Bonanza?
Well, in addition to this being the 50th anniversary of ABS, it's the 70th anniversary of continuous production of the Beechcraft Bonanza. It's the longest produced aircraft of any type in history. The Bonanza started, it was originally designed in the late World War II era as a civilian business product using some of the technology that Beechcraft developed in metal aircraft production in World War II. And it was designed to be a luxury, high speed at the time aircraft that would compete directly with airline travel times, but go exactly where you wanted to go and when you wanted to go there. The Bonanza has gone through several transformations and modifications and improvements over the years. The classic V-tail design was produced originally in 1947 through 1982. Straight tail models were introduced in the early 1960s. And then the current production model, the Model 36 Bonanza, began in 1968. So it's got quite a history as well. But overall, there have been somewhere in the neighborhood of 17,000 Bonanzas produced in the last 50 years. And as best we can tell, nearly 11,000 of them still operating in the United States.
Yeah, so you said 11,000 of them here in the United States. So that's to say there are a lot of them outside the country as well?
Well, we know of several hundred in various places. They seem to be very popular in Australia. There are a number of them in South Africa and in Europe. By far, the greatest number of them are in the United States, and I don't expect that there's more than another 1,000 of them operating worldwide outside of the U.S. By our name, American Bonanza Society, we're a worldwide organization. We have members in multiple countries around the world that are all flying these airplanes.
Oh, excellent. So let's talk about some of the different models. Give me a ballpark if people were, interested in buying one of the lesser expensive ones. What year would you be recommending? What kind of money would they be spending?
There are a number of different options. One of the major breakdowns of the aircraft are what are called the E-Series Bonanzas, so named because they are powered by the Continental E-Series engines, which were between 185 and 225 horsepower. Those are produced from 1947 through 1956. Those tend to be the lower cost Bonanzas, in part because of their age, in part because their performance, although it's excellent, is a little bit less than later higher powered airplane models, and in part because some of the parts are harder to come by for those earlier airplanes, especially the Beechcraft produced propellers and some of the engine components themselves. But you could get into a late 40s through mid 50s Bonanza anywhere in the as low as $20,000 range to on the high end, maybe $45,000 if it's extremely well equipped and in very good shape. I suspect that if you got a $25,000 Bonanza from the early 50s, late 40s, you'd probably want to put a significant amount of money into the aircraft to upgrade it to modern navigation and instrument standards. But that's one breakdown. ABS suggests to people considering buying one of these early Bonanzas that they look at it as the complex antique that it is. It will take some work. It will take some scrounging for parts sometimes. But if you get one in good shape, either you get it initially in good shape or you use some of the resources we have available at ABS to get one that you purchase in good shape, they tend to be low maintenance items and extremely sought after airplanes. So you have that late 40s, mid 50s range of Bonanzas that you can get probably under $50,000 for the aircraft itself. Most people that are looking for an earlier Bonanza that is closer to modern standards and takes a little bit less scrounging to get some of the parts for them, like to look at the late 1950s, early 1960s models, still the V-tail airplanes at that point, powered by Continental fuel-injected engines. And although the modern six-pack instrument panel did not appear until 1962, a lot of these airplanes have been retrofitted to aftermarket glass cockpits. So you eliminate some of the issues that people had in the past where the airplanes had a very non-standard instrument layout. These airplanes tend to be fast performers. They tend to be very economical on fuel, and you can get into a late 50s through mid 60s fuel-injected Bonanza. If you look around, probably in the $50 to $75 or $80,000 range. If it has the latest in navigation, you might spend a little bit more on that, but those are available. Continuing with the VTALs, the later VTAL models, starting with about the 1965 model VTAL Bonanzas through the end of production of VTALs in 1982, the prices go up significantly. And this is in part because they're much newer airplanes than the ones we've been talking about. They tend to have 285 to 300 horsepower engines. They tend to be, as a class, owners tend to keep them very well equipped. And so they will be as close to a new standard airplane as you can get in these aircraft. Again, we're looking at 1965 and newer, so maybe a $90,000 airframe through 200, or even a little bit on the high side of $200,000 by the end of production, depending on the equipment and the condition of the individual airplane. So there's a wide range from, we could go from $20,000 to $200,000 in the estimations I've done here in the VTAL airplanes over the course of its 35-year production run. We have, appearing in 1960, the model 33 Debonair, which took on the Bonanza name later in the 60s itself. The Debonair was introduced as a straight or conventional tail version of the Bonanza by Beechcraft specifically to compete with the Piper Comanche. When the Comanche was introduced in the late 50s, it had similar performance to the Bonanzas and was a lot less expensive an airplane to purchase new. So Beechcraft countered with the Debonair. Debonairs are very well sought after now because they are very economical airplanes. 1960s Debonairs, you can find some very nicely equipped, not the very latest in avionics, but maybe a Garmin 430W. So we're one step back in from the current availability Debonair in the $40,000 to $60,000 range. The original Debonairs had a 225 horsepower engine, which propels the airplane very, very nicely. They were a light airframe. The thrust-to-weight ratio is very good. So their performance is not much different from the later, heavier, more powerful airplanes. But because of people looking through online ads and they see a 225 horsepower engine as compared to a 285 or 300, they think that there's going to be a huge performance impact. It's not as big as you would think. So those early Debonairs are probably the best deal out there right now in an airplane.
And what years would those be then?
1960 through 1967.
Okay. So basically you're going to get relatively good speed, but you're going to have a lower fuel burn, and it's going to be an older model, so it'd be less expensive anyway.
Correct. And one of the nice things about that also, some people like the fact that those 224 horsepower engines are approved for use with automotive gasoline. So if you like to use auto fuel in the airplanes, you can do that.
You save some more money with that too.
Mm-hmm. Later, as the airplanes developed into a Bonanza standard equipment. In other words, what Beechcraft found with the Debonairs is that they offered a utility version of the Bonanza. Most individual buyers would add options to bring it up to essentially Bonanza standard. So eventually Beechcraft decided, well, this is what our customers want, so we're just going to produce the airplane like that. And so from 1968 onward, the Model 33 Bonanza was identical to the Model 35 Bonanza, the VTALs, with the exception of the configuration of the tail. And so the prices tend to match about the same as a contemporary VTAL aircraft. So we're looking at airplanes that are now getting into that $90,000 to $200,000 range. And since the Model 33s lasted another 12 years after the end of VTAL production, the latest Model F-33A Bonanzas may approach $300,000 if they're well equipped.
And what was the last year of production for those?
1994. And then the last variation is the Model 36 Bonanza, the six-seater with the big utility doors and a larger engine. It was introduced in 1968, went through a major rework in 1984. So the 68 through 83 airplanes are $125,000 to $200,000 airplanes. There's a big jump that happened because of an increase in payload capability, an increase in engine horsepower, some significant redesign of the instrument panel and the cabin layout, cockpit layout. From 1984 on up through the last of the A36 Bonanzas in 2005, the price ranges can get between $200,000 and $400,000. And then in 2007, 1996, Beechcraft introduced the G36 Bonanza, which has the Garmin 1000 glass cockpit and is still in production today. And those airplanes are anywhere on the used market. You can find some in the $400,000, $500,000 range. And the current asking price for a G36 is just shy of $900,000. So very wide range of prices available for the potential Bonanza owner. And one of the nice things about the Beech airframe is there are a large number of STCs available to upgrade an earlier airplane to approximate the sort of equipment you'd see on a brand new one today.
What are some of the transition issues for someone who's stepping up? Let's talk about somebody who's been flying 172, 182. They decide, hey, it's time to buy a Beechcraft, and maybe they've got an older model. What are the things that you would coach them on and counsel them from, a training standpoint?
Well, I've helped pilots make that Cherokee or 172 transition into a Bonanza many, many times. I've been teaching Bonanzas pretty much exclusively since 1990, and that's probably the most common transition that we see. And so it's actually an easy transition to do. Now, the airplane is a lot more systems intensive than a typical Cessna 172. It has fairly easy to understand and manipulate systems, but you do have to spend a little time working on the systems. The one thing that I'd recommend is that the pilot seek out an experienced instructor in type, because there are a lot of techniques and procedures out there that are fairly well known in the industry, but they may not be well known to your local CFI down the street. There are lots of tricks and tips for operating a Bonanza that make it a lot simpler than it might seem at the onset. There are several different training options available. We'll probably talk about that in a bit, but most of them make use of standard tables of power settings, airplane configurations, and airspeeds to dramatically reduce the workload of various phases of flight and to be able to predict what the airplane is going to do. And if you find someone who coaches you, an instructor who coaches you through that transition so that you learn these tips and tricks for flying the airplane when you're brand new to it, it makes the transition a lot easier.
And what's typical transition time? I mean, I'm sure there's a wide range, but what would people come to expect for transition time?
Well, it's very typical if you're brand new to retractable gear airplanes that most insurance companies are going to require that you get between 10 and 15 hours of dual instruction in that make and model before you're covered to fly as pilot in command. And then in some cases, you may have to log another 5 or 10 hours of solo time before they will cover you to fly with passengers. Now, that may seem a little excessive, but there are some significant changes that you need to make to your mindset to operate a retractable gear airplane. Inadvertent gear up landings is a very common situation, not just in the Bonanzas, but in all retractable gear airplanes. And my personal opinion is that it's in large part because pilots don't spend the time necessary when they transition into the airplane to develop new habit patterns and new ways of thinking to ensure that they always put the landing gear down and confirm that it's down. So you'll need to spend maybe 10 hours or 15 hours really getting comfortable with the airplane. Now, there are a lot of other things that you'll need to learn during the time as well. Not only are you going to go up there and get the basic feel of the aircraft by doing steep turns and stalls and those sorts of things. Most pilots making that transition don't know very much about engine management issues. Engine management is a lot simpler than maybe a lot of online discussions would make it appear, but it is different, and you do have to think about things, and you have to learn how to use your indications to get the best, most efficient use out of your airplane engine while protecting it in the long run for its health. So you're going to learn about engine management. Fuel management is another big issue, especially moving out of a 172, because basically in a 172, you can leave the fuel selector in the both position your entire life, and you never have to worry about balancing the load in the airplane or trying to remember and figure out where the fuel is coming from so that you don't inadvertently exhaust your fuel supply in one tank and have an engine failure. So you'll need to learn about fuel management as well. And then there are other issues like using an alternate system of extending the landing gear in the event of an electrical system failure or a landing gear motor failure. There are lots of things other than just going around the pattern 3 times and saying you're okay and ready to go.
Yeah, that's a good description. So tell me about BPPP, otherwise known as BPPP, and how that relates to instructors.
Okay, well, the BPPP program is ABS's premier pilot training service. We started it in 1983. It is and always has been a part of ABS's Air Safety Foundation. BPPP is designed to help pilots learn those tips and tricks for flying the airplane that I talked about a moment ago. We have a specific syllabus we cover in a pilot's initial experience flying with us, regardless of their background in flying the airplane. So if you were to come to me, even with 300 hours or 1,000 hours flying this particular A36 Bonanza or this Baron, we will go through the same syllabus so that we know that you know what you need to know to fly it safely and efficiently. But BPPP originally consisted of weekend flight training events. We would have a weekend ground school and flight training on site. Over the years, participation in that sort of thing, not only with us, but in other type clubs, they've also found that participation waned a bit because it's harder for people to get away for 4 days, and it gets very costly to be able to fly and house yourself in addition to the tuition. On our end, on the provider's end, it becomes very cost prohibitive to fly 20 or 25 flight instructors and house them for a weekend so that they can fly with a bunch of people. And over the years, we found it became less and less used by our members and consequently more and more expensive. And that just drove the use patterns down more. So starting in the about the 2011 period, we added an option, began developing an option of online ground school with on-demand flight instruction, using the same instructors, accredited instructors, using the same syllabus, but the difference is instead of the pilot having to go someplace for a long weekend to get their training in, they could take their online training whenever they wanted and schedule their own personalized flight training experience near their home or near their favorite vacation spot or wherever, and get the same flight experience they would in the weekend event. When we did that, we were able to drop the price. At the time, the tuition was $1,500, I believe, to attend the weekend event. We dropped it to $395, and the use among the ABS members has increased dramatically. We took a pause in providing the live weekend courses to try to solve some of the cost issues with that. We did that in mid-2012. Some of the instructors who used to and still do fly with the BPPP on-demand system started a for-profit company of their own, and so our Air Safety Foundation board decided there's no reason to try to compete with a commercial enterprise doing that. We can focus on what we do and let them do what they do. So we now, the BPPP program now is exclusively an on-demand, personalized program. We have added a number of flight instructors, very highly qualified Beechcraft flight instructors to the program. We might talk about that in a moment. And now we have nearly 100 instructors available throughout the U.S. and a couple overseas that can provide this syllabus. So we've seen a significant uptick in the number of ABS members that participate in the program.
So if I were an instructor and I wanted to become certified to teach the BPPP program, how would I, as a flight instructor, get certified?
Okay, well, this is really an opportunity that developed out of something else that we worked at and developed called the ABS Flight Instructor Academy. But first to your question, and then we might talk about the academy, the academy's other mission in more detail after that. If you are a flight instructor who has a certain amount of experience in Beechcraft airplanes and a certain amount of experience as an instructor, you have to hold an instrument instructor rating because 90% of ABS members are instrument rated, and there's an expectation they'll be able to get instrument instruction as part of the process. So if you meet a certain level of experience, then you can become accredited as a BPPP instructor. To do that, you take our online Flight Instructor Academy. It's a 19-module online learning system that talks not only about the specifics of teaching in Beech airplanes. We talk about the fuel system changes over the years, the engine management changes over the years, all of the different things like that. We also go into instructor professionalism. We cover our syllabus in depth. We have a set of items that we are required to do in all training sessions. We have a set of things that we will not do in all training sessions. We have some internal limitations. So you take the Flight Instructor Academy to learn all about not only, you already know how to instruct, we're teaching you how to teach our standardized syllabus. You then send in a resume and recommendation letters from Beechcraft pilots you've trained in the last few years. And if you put together that whole package, I personally do a telephone interview with each BPPP instructor applicant, and then they fly with one of our standardization evaluation instructors. We have about 20 of them around the country, and go through the entire syllabus with that instructor. The flight check portion of becoming accredited as a BPPP instructor is part evaluation. We want to see that the applicant can safely and effectively present and communicate the syllabus items from the BPPP syllabus, and as part orientation, because a lot of what we do is not right out of the practical test standards or the airman certification standards. We do a lot of maneuvers that are not normally seen in FAA-based training, and we do some of the check ride maneuvers in different ways than you would do them on a check ride, so that we can demonstrate some of the specific handling characteristics of the Bonanza. If you go through that entire process, you take the online flight, you have a certain amount of Beechcraft instructional experience ahead of time. You take the ABS Flight Instructor Academy course, you get your recommendation letters and pass your telephone interview, and then you pass the standardization check flight, then you become an accredited BPPP instructor.
All right. So let me ask for your help in answering a listener question that came into me a couple of weeks ago, and I saved it since I knew we would be talking here today. Here's the question.
Hi, this is Seth from Arkansas. I would love to hear your opinion on becoming a type-specific instructor. I do independent CFI work part-time, and I'm always looking to broaden my expertise. For the past year, I've been entertaining the idea of becoming either a BPPP or a CSIP. I'll let you explain to the listeners what those programs are, but some of the benefits for me as far as the BPPP is there aren't currently any in my state, and I personally know quite a few Beechcraft pilots. It's also appreciably cheaper to receive this certification. On the other hand, I feel like becoming a CSIP, while being a little more costly, would open up some different opportunities and allow me to fly the Cirrus more, which I've really grown to enjoy. My concern with the CSIP is the amount of time needed to stay current and the availability of new clients. Since I don't know many Cirrus pilots, I would need to do some work on finding new clients. Anyway, I would love to hear your thoughts on these two instructor certifications. I believe both programs are a major step in the right direction to increase GA safety, as instructor enrichment is a major part of any solution towards solving the loss of control accident trends. I really believe that if all the manufacturers had a tailored initial and recurrent training taught by type-specific certified instructors, we would see a major decrease in accident and incident rates. Look forward to hearing your thoughts. Thanks, Max.
Well, Tom, what do you think?
Well, I think Seth is right first in that I agree with him that if pilots received more type-specific training, and especially the transition training when they're new to the airplane, that we would see a very positive reflection in the accident rates. Answering this question specifically, there is absolutely no reason why he can't do both. A great many of our accredited BPPP instructors are also CSIPs, Cirrus Standardized Instructor Pilots, and fly in other types as well. Most of them are part-time. Most of our instructors are part-time also. They're not working full-time in flight school. So actually, Seth is very typical of the sort of person who would act as a BPPP instructor. He did mention the relative costs. The BPPP program, we see the flight instructor training mission as being integral to the purposes of the American Bonanza Society and our safety foundation. And so we keep the cost as low as possible. The online course is free to ABS members, as is the case with the BPPP course as well. You don't have to do the flight training with us, and you can do the ground school free. So that portion is free to a potential BPPP instructor. And the only cost associated with the check flight is the fee that is paid directly to the instructor who is administering that check flight. So ABS doesn't get anything out of that at all. Of course, you have to provide an airplane. In some cases, we can help people with that. So you have some airplane costs. But the actual cost of accreditation, with the exception of the airplane for the standardization flight, is $300. So we make it very affordable to our members. Like I said, a lot of the people that are BPPP instructors are CSIPs as well. They're very complementary missions. As a matter of fact, ABS assisted the COPA organization, the Cirrus Pilot Proficiency Program, in developing its program when it was new. And I understand there's a lot of similarity between that and the CSIP program. So we're all using the same basic philosophies of teaching and aircraft handling. We're just applying them differently to match the specifics of the aircraft being flown.
Yeah, and Seth mentions that he knows quite a few Beechcraft pilots, and that there are no certified BPPP instructors in Arkansas. So it sounds like that would be the place to start, and then you could branch out from there. I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. What do you think?
Absolutely. Now, we've got very good coverage for BPPP instructors, but we are not everywhere. And that's because this is an accreditation program. We're not hiring people to fill a particular region or a slot. What we're doing is we are finding people who have the qualifications as instructors and have some significant Beechcraft experience, and who additionally have the time to devote to being a BPPP instructor. So like I said, we've got good geographic distribution, but we're not everywhere because those people aren't everywhere. And often the people that do have that experience don't have the additional time to take on the extra workload. So I think Seth would be in a very good position, both as an instructor and geographically, to be part of the BPPP program.
Okay, great. Change gears here a little bit. Earlier this week, I was delivering a Cirrus to a shop here in the San Francisco area for a pre-buy. And while I was there, I bumped into one of our show's listeners, Fritz. And Fritz owns a Beechcraft A36, and he said he participates in the Bees to Oshkosh. So can you tell folks about what that is and some of the other activities you have going on related to AirVenture?
Okay, well, Bonanzas to Oshkosh is not an ABS function. It's run separately. You can go to their website. It's B2OSH.org, so B2OSH.org. Because we've got, as best we can tell, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80-85% market penetration, and because the people who own and run B2OSH recommend ABS membership to all of their participants so they have access to the technical and safety information we provide. Most of the people who fly in B2OSH are ABS members, but again, it's not an ABS function. Bonanzas to Oshkosh is a mass arrival into Oshkosh, traditionally the first mass arrival of the event, arriving at about 1 o'clock on Saturday before AirVenture begins. They fly approximately an hour from Rockford, Illinois, up to Whitman Field at Oshkosh. And most years they'll have somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 airplanes. Many of the participants in B2OSH regularly practice formation flying throughout the year at various locations around the country. Some of the participants aren't nearly as active as that, but they have some very good safety protocols in place and follow a very specific procedure to get everybody in there quickly and as safely as they possibly can. Bonanzas to Oshkosh started about, I think, 26 years ago as a means for friends who fly Bonanzas to camp together at Oshkosh, because there is no reserved parking. If you're going to park together, you have to arrive together. And so it evolved from there. Now it's one of the major type gatherings at AirVenture. As far as ABS is concerned, we have a major presence at AirVenture. We have since about 1983. We actually take up 3 booths up very near the flight line. We're right across the street from Theater in the Woods, so drop on by if you want to see us. We'll have a display airplane out there. This year we've got a 1958 J-35 V-tail Bonanza that's been wonderfully restored and updated. We have a gathering area for social activities. We take some of our technical experts up there so you can ask your questions about owning, maintaining, and flying Beech airplanes throughout the week. And we reserve a portion of the tent for seminars we call ABS tent topics. We have a full slate, somewhere around, we're just finalizing it now, but something like in the neighborhood of 24 seminars throughout the week, presented by Beechcraft experts and owners who have expertise in particular areas to make our attendees at Oshkosh learn more about safely owning and operating your airplane. So it's a big event for us. We see more ABS members there than any other event around the country. We have an off-site dinner for our members and a few other member functions, but everything's really centers on the ABS tent at AirVenture.
Well, and you mentioned this is the 50th anniversary of ABS. Any other events or special things you're doing this year to celebrate?
Well, our biggest commemoration this year is the ABS convention, Bring Your Beechcraft Home to Wichita, in September 21st through 24th, again here in Wichita. We already have somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,000 members registered to attend. Interest has been very good for this. We have a full range of seminars. We have Beechcraft factory tours. We have a hangar party at Colonel James Jabara Airport, where we'll have some display airplanes out, and we'll have a great social event that night. And we have the largest Beechcraft-specific exhibit hall there co-located with it as well. So you can come learn about flying your airplane, maintaining your airplane, meet other airplane owners and enthusiasts who from around the world. We do attract people from around the world. And you have an opportunity to visit with virtually all of the vendors that provide Beechcraft-specific products and services to enhance your ownership experience.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about ABS. Let's talk a little bit about you and some of the things that you're doing. I've been on the email list for your Mastery Flight Training newsletter probably for 10 years. Tell people about that.
Well, Mastery Flight Training, I've done that since 1994 in one form or another. It is it's my own little company that I use for all my publication, my flight instruction, and that sort of thing. And you're talking about my weekly flying lessons newsletter. If you go to my website, it's a little cumbersome to say online, but Mastery, MASTERY, -flight, FLIGHT, -training.com. So masteryflighttraining.com with hyphens. You can subscribe free on the website for the weekly report. They usually come out Wednesday nights. Now, what I do in Flying Lessons Weekly is I look at some of the recent accidents and other trends that we note in private aviation and try to draw some lessons from them. Within a week after an accident occurs, we don't know what really happened in that specific case. But from the initial reports, people are out there chatting, people are talking, people are thinking about what might have happened. And that's what I do with Mastery Flight Training, with Flying Lessons Weekly. I use recent accident trends or reports as a jumping off point to remind us of the things we need to do, things we need to think about when we fly our airplanes. So hopefully we don't get ourselves into what might have been one of the possible scenarios that was involved in that particular case. Again, I've been doing this for a long time. It's kind of my personal therapy. And in conjunction with that, I do a limited amount of flight instruction, but most of the instruction I do any longer is through the ABS's BPPP program.
All right, so tell us a little bit about the different academy programs through ABS.
Well, I've already talked a little bit about the Flight Instructor Academy program. Not only do we use that as a means of accrediting experienced Beechcraft instructors, but we really see one of the biggest missions of the ABS Air Safety Foundation is to generate or to develop that next generation of Beechcraft experts. And so one of the ways we do that is by providing the online academy program. If you're a flight instructor, you may not have the Beechcraft experience we're looking for an accredited instructor, but the opportunity may arise for you to provide a flight reviewer or an IPC, or even do transition training in a Beechcraft product. So we make available to you all of the information that we provide to our accredited instructors so that you know what we know from 35 years of teaching type-specific Beech instruction. So that's the ABS Flight Instructor Academy program. Similarly, we've noticed over the years that it's harder and harder to find a Beechcraft expert mechanic out there in the field. So for about the last 4 years, we provided the ABS Maintenance Academy program as well. It's free to ABS members who are certificated mechanics, preference to inspector authorizations, IAs. It is a weekend course that is about 50-50 classroom and hands-on aircraft instructional and experience program. What we're trying to do with the ABS Maintenance Academy is ensure that no matter where you take your airplane for maintenance, that mechanic has some of the basic information we've learned in 50 years of technical support for these airplanes, and further has entered into a networking program so that they have better access to other mechanics that can help solve issues that they can't fix themselves. So those are really two of the big things we're doing for the future of Beechcraft ownership: training flight instructors and training mechanics.
Tom, it's really clear to me that anyone flying or owning a Beechcraft would just be nuts not to be a member of the American Bonanza Society. Tell me, what does it cost and where do people find more information?
Well, ABS membership is $70 a year. We have some long-term options as well, but it's $70 a year. Go to Bonanza, BONANZA.org, or you can call us at 316-945-1700. You can join online, you can join on the phone, you can swing by the tent at Oshkosh and join there. We'd love to have you as a member of ABS, whether you own a Beech product, you are considering possibly owning a Beech product, you maintain them, you instruct in them, or you're just an enthusiast about Beechcraft piston airplanes. Please come by and become a member.
Tom Turner, thank you so much for your time today, and have a great time at Oshkosh later this month.
Thank you very much, Max. I'm looking forward to it.
And just a reminder, our listener survey is up now live at aviationnewstalk.com/survey. It'll be open throughout the month of July, so please take a moment, tell me what aircraft you fly most frequently, what plane you plan to check out in next, and what topics you'd like to see us cover on the show. And if you enjoyed this show, please support the show by helping me meet one of the goals on my Patreon page. I'd like to really get the first goal of $100 a month knocked out quickly, and that's to pay back the money I've invested so far in equipment, software, and hosting fees to bring you this show. Because once we get through that, then we can quickly move to the next goal that I'm very excited about, which is to have 2 apps developed, one for iTunes and one for the Google Play Store, so that non-techie pilots, and there are lots of them out there, pilots who are unfamiliar with podcasts can easily find us in the App Store and then play the show. It's easy to find my Patreon page and donate. Just go to aviationnewstalk.com/awesome, since we have so many awesome listeners. Or you can also support the show by signing up for one of my online courses. I've got courses for the Garmin G1000 and also for GPSs that are WASP-based, things like the Garmin 430, 530, and the G1000. Just go out to pilotlearning.com. I'm Max Truscott. Fly safely and keep the blue side up.